I've been to Egypt several times and have enjoyed traveling in Egypt and reading about everything having to do with Egypt, particularly in Egyptian antiquity. And they have a concept in antiquity about the basis of a society. A society should be one that contains social justice, harmony, people living together as a family. And it's called Mat, M-A-A-T. And they have a goddess by the same name who's kind of personification of that concept in a form of a deity. And when in antiquity someone would die, the storyline was that they would take that person's heart out and put it on a balance scale. And Mat would weigh the person's heart against one of her feathers. It was a way of determining whether that person was basically a good person or not. And that the balance scale, how it balanced out, would determine whether the person would have a nice life after death or have a less likely good life, kind of in hell for the Egyptians. I read an article in the newspaper it's been several months ago, about the University of Princeton having some people at Princeton University were protesting Woodrow Wilson. And the reason for that was that Woodrow Wilson, who was the president of not only the United States, but also the president of Princeton, was a racist, which he was. I mean, just getting around it, he was not. He would not be a leader in the civil rights movement today. And because he was a racist, this group wanted everything having to do with Woodrow Wilson to be removed from Princeton. Statues, things in the curriculum, any kind of tribute to their former president of the United States and also Princeton, the university, had to be removed because he was a racist. Now, I'm not going to have to defend the fact that I am way far to the left on social issues, including civil rights. We haven't done enough, and we still need to do much more. I get that, and I push for that all the time. I mean, read some of my articles. But this group wants to get rid of everything that had to do with Wilson at Princeton. And what they need to do is to remember Egyptian history and Mat. And they also need to think about the removal of everything having to do with Woodrow Wilson from Princeton means in a larger context. I mean, if you're going to do that at Princeton, you're going to have to do that at other places. I mean, for example, Washington, D.C., George Washington had slaves. Thomas Jefferson had slaves. What are you going to do? Rename Washington, D.C. to somebody that was not a racist? You have to weigh that person against, the good and the bad within that person. In my opinion, it's ludicrous, because if you did that about Wilson, you would be renaming not just things to do with Wilson, but a good chunk of all the American presidents. And universities named after them and things like that. And so it's not only, and it goes beyond just racism. What about sexism? What about homophobia? What about those people who, it goes on and on and on. So this article is an attempt to deal with civil rights, but to deal with it by thinking, okay, Wilson was wrong. So is Thomas Jefferson. So is George Washington. I mean, but we have many, many issues in America today, starting with racism and sexism and homophobia, that we need to address. And doing it, thinking, is the best way. But just going out and saying, oh, that guy's a bad person, let's get rid of him, does not make any sense, one. And secondly, it makes the opposition, the people who are not into equality, say, yeah, these people are, fight the good fight. But before you fight the good fight, think about it. In the meantime, you take care.